Hey everyone, I'm super excited about today's video because I've been so busy building DIY modules, so much so that I've actually kind of slacked off on making videos. And so here I am, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of modules that I've built. This is the ST Modular Hi-Hat and the ST Modular Boba Fat. I've already posted some time-lapse videos of the builds so that if you're interested in building these, you can kind of see what goes into it. These are the first two modules that I've made that are not from a kit. So I had to look up the parts and kind of figure out what I needed to order and all that stuff. And for me, I'm still pretty new at this thing, so that was kind of difficult to actually figure out. ST Modular has a great GitHub, and once you kind of figure out how to navigate that and the BOM, and you can sort of piece together what needs be done for these modules. I ordered the PCB and the panel from CalSynth. All of the surface mount stuff was already put on there. So the only things that I had to do were the through hole stuff. Overall, this was a really dirt cheap build, and I came out of it with some really great drum sounds. The hi-hat cost me just over 40 bucks to build, including shipping for everything. And the Boba Fat cost me about $120. There's also another site, Pusherman Products, or Pusherman Productions, that has kits for these types of things. So if you're in Europe, you might want to order through them, and that way you don't have to worry about figuring out the right kind of knobs and all the other stuff. When I was talking to Sean from CalSynth, he did mention to me that he might have kits coming soon. So maybe if you're watching this video sometime in the future, there'll be kits available on the CalSynth website as well. But I've got the two modules loaded up in this little skiff I just built, so let's jump into it. So I've pulled out a few modules to use in this demonstration. I'm going to be clocking everything and sending triggers using PAMs. This is the hi-hat. The Boba Fat's right here. I'm going to be using maths as a CV source, as a modulation source. And then I have an AI mixer that was also a DIY project, very easy project to build. I'm going to be sending everything through the mixer and then out into my audio interface. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the hi-hat, and then I'll send that out into number one of my mixer. So you can hear it's pretty basic. There's two controls, a decay knob and a color knob. If I play it, it almost turns into just like noise. There still is a percussive element to it. When you start getting into the lower decay settings, it sounds a little bit more like what you'd expect from a hi-hat. The color noise goes kind of from like white to like a blue noise, maybe. Let's hear that. What's really cool about this is when you use the CV modulation. I'm going to use maths for that. Just a little disclaimer, I think I made an error when I was putting in my LED. You have to be mindful of the orientation of it, and I think I put it backwards. So as it receives as it receives negative voltage, the light goes up. When I think it's supposed to be the other way. I'm not sure if I actually did it wrong or if that's just the way it's designed, but either way, if it's a negative voltage, the light goes on. If it's a positive voltage, the light dims out. So I'm going to set an LFO from number 4 in maths. We'll send it into the CV, and we'll set this to a negative voltage. I actually think it does sound better when there's a negative voltage. And this knob here acts as an attenuator for it. Just give you a sense of what it would sound like with positive voltage. Guess you can make some really interesting things. But I really like it with the something like that. And that's the ST Modular hi-hat. Let's jump over to the Boba Fett, which is a little bit more involved to explain. So it's a dual drum generator. There's two sides to it, and this line right down here separates the two sides. They call the left-hand side the soft mallet side and the right-hand side the hard mallet side, and you can tell that there's like kind of a softer squiggle here and a harder squiggle here. The website for Boba Fett describes the hard edge side as kind of like what you would typically think of with a kick drum, and the left-hand side as capable of generating sub bass sounds and things like that. This module is super quirky, and even the website said that it's kind of tough to find the sweet spot, but once you do, it's great. I totally agree with that at first it didn't quite hit me as something that's really awesome, but then I have found some sweet spots where I kind of set it and forget it, and it's just a great kick drum sound. But I'm going to walk you through a few of the features and sounds, and we'll see what we can get at. So let's start with the left-hand side, which is just the kick drum side. So I'm going to run out from Pam's into the gate. It's number 2, so we'll just set that on every beat. Out into number 2 of our mixer. I'll turn down the hi-hats for now. Independent level controls for both sides. So let's turn down the soft mallet side. So right now, all we're going to be getting is the hard mallet side. Before I forget, I should mention that I did also make a mistake in this build. It's an aesthetic mistake where the presence knob is this little tiny plastic knob, and the modulation attenuation is just a normal size knob. When I was ordering them, I just sort of mixed those up, but they are the correct resistances. They're just not aesthetically the right knob. So if you look at mine and see that it looks a little bit different than some of the other pictures, that's why. But it should function and sound exactly the same. All right, so let's talk about these knobs. So really, even though there's 4 knobs and 1 switch on the right-hand side, the only 3 that affect the sound of the kick drum are the top 3. This one is the out volume, and that affects all of them. And this one is for modulation switching. I'll get into that in a second, but let's hear what it sounds like. So this first knob affects the pitch. And it can get, so low that it's almost like a sub bass. I find the sweet spot to be about 3 o'clock, somewhere in there. The level knob is just the volume of it. So if we go all the way down, you can't hear it. If it goes all the way up, it sounds pretty loud. Now, the next one is boost. So now what boost does is it increases the lower frequencies. So if you turn it all the way down, it doesn't quite have that bass sound. And that's it. That's the kick drum sound. This is generally right around where I think the sweet spot is. But you can mix in some of the soft mallet side to kind of fill it out, and then I might turn the pitch lower. Let's take a look at the soft mallet side. So for this, just for the sound purposes, I'm going to turn the kick drum or the hard mallet side all the way down so you can see nothing's coming out. And we'll turn up this side. So it's got the same thing as pitch, level, and boost. You can get really high, almost so we can't even hear it, or I can't anyway. Let's set it right there for now. So here we have trigger attack. It's labeled as trig slew, decay, and release. Now, these didn't exactly work the way I expected them, and it took some figuring out. And it's partly due to presence. For some reason, when you turn the presence up, it brings out the gate. Because if you see here, I have a gate going in. So when you turn up the presence, you get this gate, and then, I mean, I guess the attack does a little bit, but the decay doesn't really do anything. The release does. So what I think is happening is that as it sends a gate, the second the voltage gets to its highest point, it triggers the envelope. But when you turn up presence, whatever signal is coming in will be more prominent. So in this case, because it's a gate, it's going to almost negate the decay part of the envelope, because that will go down while the gate's all the way up. If we turn the presence all the way down, suddenly the decay takes effect. So it's just something to be aware of. It took me a long time. For some reason, I thought when I saw presence, like I have an old guitar amp, a tube guitar amp, where there's a presence knob and it almost like brings out the highs a little bit, makes it sound more airy, more present. But that's not the way this works. Generally speaking, I've found it to be best if I just leave the presence all the way down. Let's talk about the modulation. So we have mod sync here, mod attenuation, and the mod rate. There's an internal LFO, and it's controlled by these three different knobs. If we turn this switch up, then it's a freeform LFO. It's just going to be going in the background. If we turn it down, it's synced to the incoming trigger signals. And this affects the pitch. And then if I turn it to like the freeform, so you can make some pretty funky sounds. If you're looking for traditional drum sounds, then probably leaving these down would be the best option. But even just a little bit of modulation is kind of nice, just to have it be, because you know, real drums do have a slight bit of modulation in the pitch as a mallet hits it. Let's bring in the kick drum. Trying to get the pitches to sound good together. mean, that's a great sounding kick drum. But another thing you can do is you can send separate gates to both sides. And this is another thing that I think is kind of quirky about the Boba Fett, is that you see down here it says gate and gate S. So you would assume that gate S is the soft mallet, but it's not. Gate S is the hard mallet. I don't know. I don't know why they labeled it as gate S. So let's set up in PAMs. Let's go over to this one and we'll do something like that. And let's bring in our hi-hats. You know what? Let's reverse these and have the hard mallet, the kick drum going on a steady rate. There's a couple of other inputs here that I want to go over. First of all, there's the mod CV. Now, when you plug something into here, what it does is it overrides the LFO modulation and will modulate the pitch. It doesn't track 1 volt per octave, which is kind of unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. So let's plug in there, and I'm going to go over to number 4. And since we'll go at this rate, and let's set it to something I've done in other videos. We can set the shape to a random waveform, and we'll quantize it. Let's just set it to a minor scale, and then maybe lower the level a little bit. I guess I didn't really need to quantize it, especially since I'm attenuating it anyway. It's going to mess it all up, but we could loop the beats so it almost has like a melody or something. So that's the mod CV. Mod reset will just reset the modulation, so that way you can do it to different beats and doesn't have to be necessarily synced up to the beat that's coming in for the trigger, but you could have it be a rhythmical reset. The vary amount, now this is kind of interesting. What it does is it allows you to combine 2 different trigger sources to create sort of like a different looping beat. So you'll hear that when this fourth beat goes on, it really accents it. Actually, I'm going to set this back to a gate. And you could even set another type of modulation, like let's go from this would probably be better if it was synced up. Let's do that. So there you have it. That's the Boba Fat and ST Modular hi-hat. Am I going to be looking for other drums to replace these? Possibly, maybe. But as far as bang for the buck, it's kind of hard to beat these two. And at the same time, I can't say enough about how much fun it is to DIY your own modules. So I would definitely, if you're looking for something to build, I would definitely check these out. They're a lot of fun to play with, and they can definitely scratch that itch for hi-hats and kick drum sounds. All right, so that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.